The coming of age for Newcastle's only Lifeline service caused problems at the Lawson Street premises. Under a devoted team of 6 full-time and part-time workers and nearly 200 volunteers, problems such as the lack of space and crowded conditions sparked the search for a new home. And today the move began. The former Seventh-day Adventist Administration headquarters, just 2 blocks away in Gordon Avenue, has been purchased for Lifeline's expanding operations. The modern 2-storey premises has ample space for separate counselling rooms for both the 24-hour telephone service and personal counselling. As well as averaging 10,500 calls a year, Lifeline also operates incoming calls for all women's refuges in the area. Lifeline's old premises will be auctioned to help pay for the new one. And Director Dennis Milliken hopes the people of Newcastle will balance the books.
Lifeline was fortunate enough that it had sufficient money to actually buy the building, but it does mean that we now have virtually no reserves, and we are seeking to replenish those reserves so that we can continue the development of the service and hopefully expand it.
And how will you be doing that? Through the building appeal?
Yes, we've launched a building appeal and it is still currently running, and we hope that as people are approached they will respond very generously to that appeal.
Fine, great.
The William IV project has been underway for just over 2 years, and the huge vessel is nearing completion. Today, a boiler specially designed and made for the William IV was delivered. It was made locally by McColl Manufacturing of Cardiff for less than cost price. The boiler will generate the steam to run the steam engine and is very similar to the original boiler, according to project manager Ken Wickner.
Well, not quite the same, because we've got to build to modern day safety standards and engineering principles, but basically it's the same type of boiler in that it's a coal-fired boiler, the likes of which hasn't been built in Australia in probably 50 years.
Federal Minister for Transport Peter Morris was also on hand today to hand over a cheque for $11,000, which is the final instalment of a $250,000 grant from the Steel Industries Assistance Program. The William IV is scheduled for launching on September 26. However, the vessel will not be fully completed at this time, but will be ready for sea trials. The boat, which will eventually become a maritime museum, is expected to be fully operational by November. Newcastle is one of the safest Labor seats in Australia, but according to local members of the Liberal Party, Newcastle won't do well until it becomes a marginal or swinging seat. They believe strongly that the ALP is neglecting the area, thinking they'll be returned no matter what they do. It was on this platform of Break Labor's grip on Newcastle that local chartered accountant Ross Taggart launched his campaign last night for the seat of Newcastle. He is faced with the daunting task of trying to gain a 12% swing to enable the Liberals to unseat Alan Morris. A number of other Liberal candidates were at last night's function. They include Molly Blake, who is running for the seat of Charlton, and Milton Kane, who is running for the seat of Shortland. More than 270 first-year students who are enrolled in the CAE's nursing course will carry out the tests in the next 2 weeks. The students are strategically located in a number of shopping centres, including Lake Macquarie Fair, the Stockton Mall and Market Town. They are checking a range of health statistics such as blood pressure, height, weight and pulse rates. The exercise will enable students to put into practice health and communication skills that they have learned. They are also asking shoppers to fill out this questionnaire, which they hope will help people to identify a healthy lifestyle.
And they'll get some information about the various factors that might cause stress in their lives. Following on from this, we'll have the students analyse the data that they've obtained to see whether there are any relationships between lifestyle and high blood pressure, for example. So we're providing a service in the sense that we're
Death is an emotive issue that affects relatives and friends to their very core. So the desecration of about 123 graves at the Kurri cemetery has caused considerable anguish. Today there was a constant stream of people checking to see if their relatives' or friends' grave had been touched. What appears to have been a rampage has left headstones pushed over or picked up and dumped onto other graves, vases of flowers smashed, and wooden crosses on recent burials ripped and trodden into the ground. According to Detective Constable Peter Fox, the damage is not the work of the young children, because they would not have been strong enough. He believes some older teenage youths may be responsible.
Apart from the monetary value of repairing the graves, it's very distressing for the relatives and friends of the people buried here. We've had a number of distressing phone calls, people ringing us up this morning and breaking down in tears to report the graves being destroyed.
And what, have you had any that won't be able to afford?
Well, we've had a number of cases where people said, well, one fellow I know, for instance, has actually come and picked up his father's headstone and taken it home and tried to repair it himself because he's unable to afford the cost. And another woman has 3 sons buried here, and she's a pensioner, and as she told us, she's unable to afford the cost of repairing it.
This particular section of the F3 freeway has caused unprecedented interest, with resident groups lobbying long and hard to keep the highway away from their communities. The DMR has recommended the western route because it will affect the least number of people and it will avoid lucrative mining leases. Because of the intense public interest, Transport Minister Peter Morris, who will make the final decision on the route of the freeway, has decided to gather his own information. And today, 3 of his officers spoke to some residents from the Edgeworth and Barnsley areas. They favour the western option, also citing that mine subsidence would be a major problem with the other 2 alternatives. How important are the meetings with people from the Department of Transport?
Oh, very important. The Minister has been kind enough to send these people up to speak to us and to find out the, well, I suppose you say, the community feeling on the routes, and I think it's a credit to the Minister that he's done this.
This year, 10 teams of players up to the age of 12 are taking part in the championships, which are being hosted by the Hunter Region Primary School Sports Association. Defending champions, the Hunter Region, are seen here in the gold and royal blue in their match today against Metropolitan North. The Hunter side is made up of players from throughout the region, including Muswellbrook, Aberdeen and Dungog. The teams play a special variation of the game called Mod League. The variation aims to make the game safer. There are fewer scrums, and it's certainly fast, with players encouraged to work as a team and pass the ball as much as possible. In another match today, Metropolitan South West in the green and white took on South Coast. The final of the competition will be played tomorrow. As well, a New South Wales representative side will be chosen to play Queensland, the Northern Territory and the ACT in a test series. The third game in the series between New South Wales and Queensland will be played at Lyle Peacock Oval at Toronto in August. Organisers say the standard of play this year is the best they've seen, and for spectators, there's certainly been plenty of action.
Squash courts at Belmont. When this day last weekend, they could have been called the Grunt Course. The only squashing was in the crowd. The event, the Hunter Valley Bench Press Titles, a gathering of the very strongest of sportsmen and women. No sand on this lady at next summer's beach party. Let's go! Next door, the beauty had given way to muscles. The heavyweight division was down to the last three and onto the serious end of it all, with the title at stake and the weights reaching massive proportions. Proceedings for a backroom brawl, but it was all in the name of greater effort. Greg Sell of Sydney finished on top with this lift of 205 kilograms. Be warned, a handshake with this man could be a health hazard.
The pilot of a twin-engine plane took a wrong turn over a Boston neighborhood early this morning. The plane crashed into a row of houses, killing the pilot and setting off a fire that destroyed 3 houses. People on the ground, 3 of them were seriously burned. Into a row of houses, killing the pilot and setting...
Leaving for Camp David less than an hour after his medical checkup, President Reagan walked a bit slower than polyps in his intestine, and that the growths do not appear cancerous, although they will be analyzed over the weekend. A-OK. Mr. Reagan emphasized it with a little skip. The attending physicians...
Only rarely did Becker show the flair and the spirit that's made him what he is. And that wasn't enough. Things continued to go against him. His head dropped and he couldn't fight back. Doohan won the 4th set 6-4, and that was goodbye Boris, the first champion to go out so early since Manuel Santana 20 years ago.
Year-old Rachel McQuillan of Merriweather showed her strength in the Newcastle Open Junior Tennis Finals today. McQuillan easily beat Nicole Brent of Maryland's in straight sets. Rachel is ranked #1 in Australia in the under-16s. Tonight she will receive a $2,000 grant, the Des Curran Award, for the 3rd year in a row. McQuillan has a hectic year of international competition ahead of her. In July she'll compete in the Maureen Connolly Cup in New York. Later she'll compete in West Germany, and she has been selected for the McDonald squad to play in the US and Scandinavia in August. In the Boys Open Junior Tennis Finals, Richard Nichols, 15 from Cole Point, upset the favourite 15-year-old William O'Neill from Holmesville. In 3 hard-fought sets, Nichols emerged victorious with a final score of 6-4, 3-6, 6-3. O'Neill played more aggressively in the second set, but fell away in the third, missing vital points. Both boys will figure prominently in the Open Schweppes annual district titles in August.
A blue sky above and a crisp winter's day, the perfect ingredients for a ride in the country down memory lane. In cars ranging from Morris Austins to Rolls Royces, members of Newcastle's Restored Motor Vehicles Club took to the roads with rally maps in hand. Every year the event attracts motoring enthusiasts from across the state, as far north as Tamworth and south to Sydney. In the sport of rallying, points are awarded and taken away. Despite the simplicity of the map, some navigators were easily confused. One wrong turn or an incorrect answer to the cryptic questions and precious points are lost.
How many cars do you name starting with Z?
Z. Zephyr?
One.
Zenith?
Yes, 2.
Zebra.
According to organiser Bernard Proudlock, the memory teasers are just part of the fun.
We've sent them in 2 opposite directions, and if they don't read their rally, instructions properly, they end up at the wrong checkpoints, and this they lose points for that, and it keeps them on the ball, and we'll see who's reading their rally instructions right.
Newcastle Wallsend has encountered hiccup after hiccup in clinching its deal with BHP to buy the Saxon Vale mine. The latest burp is a decision by State Cabinet to reject a request by the company to vary the terms of the lease to allow 130 people to be employed at the mine instead of 236. State Mineral Resources Minister Ken Gabb is absolutely definite that the government won't waiver the conditions. He says the lease condition merely seeks to formalise previous undertakings by the company, and that the government has agreed to waiver super royalties for 2 years on the basis of the company employing 236 people. In a statement, Mr Gabb says, "I have informed Newcastle Wallsend that I expect a definite reply by noon on Friday. The uncertainty surrounding the future of the mine cannot continue. It is unfair to BHP and creates an unnecessary element of apprehension throughout the entire New South Wales coal industry." The General Manager of Newcastle Wallsend, Kurri, said it is tempting to take the easy way out and not to worry about the purchase. There is a lot of risk and hard work associated with buying Saxon Vale. He says the company will reconsider its position over the next few days and will reply to the state government by Friday. In tonight's news, a statewide industrial campaign may hit New South Wales coal mines. Mining unions give employers an ultimatum following changes to the New South Wales Workers' Compensation Act.
For all the news,
join us tonight
at 6.
Of Stockton Caravan Park were this morning celebrating what they say was a victory of public pressure. The residents will be accommodated in the park during the scheduled upgrading and after its reopening as an otherwise tourist-only venue. Yesterday, the Lord Mayor, John McNaughton, admitted that the episode had cost the council politically, but was adamant that it always planned to look after the residents.
He said that the leasing arrangement required the lessee to hand over the park to the council empty of vans, and that if the council had told the residents they could stay, the lessee would have been able to take legal action against them. He said that any statements given earlier by Alderman to the effect that the residents would have to leave were simply personal opinions. The resolution of this issue has not seen the end of the drama, however. Now the council faces another irate group. More than 100 vans are left in the park by people who use them weekends and holidays. The council still has to clear these for the upgrading. This afternoon the Lord Mayor said the park would not be used for this purpose after it reopened. He said state government policy designated the use of waterfront parks such as this as simply tourist preserves. Peter Barrack of Trades Hall Council said today that they still supported the residents, who were standing behind the rest of the van owners.
Good afternoon, I'm Helen Hughes. In tonight's news, a report from the vineyards where one Hunter Valley winemaker says he's pulled off an industry coup, selling our local wines to the restaurants of France.
For all the news,
join us tonight
at 6.
It's always said that politicians visit the babies at election time. Community Services Minister Rutherford found no shortage today. He was in the Hunter to officially open the Rutherford Childcare Centre. For 4-year-old Kelly Camady, the Stranger Danger campaign went out the window as she agreed to be covered for the cameras in front of the official plaque. Mr Rutherford reinforced the ALP's commitment to childcare and said the next front would be after-school care for 5 to 12-year-olds.
Also included in the need, now more clearly seen, is what we call out-of-school hours care, which is going to be our next thrust, to look after kids from 5 to 12 years old, vital if women are going to be able to stay in the workforce.
On the controversial economic issue of whether the government was placing pressure on the Reserve Bank to reduce interest rates before the election, Mr Herford was particularly forthright.
I'd say it's rubbish. I, as Minister assisting the Treasurer, not just as a former Housing Minister, but I am acting Treasurer when Mr Keating goes away, I see all the papers that come through. I know the relationships between the government and the Reserve Bank, and I know that it is just a political ploy at this time.
No collusion?
There's no collusion, and there would be just too many risks that a government would take of officers in the Reserve Bank, for instance, coming out and saying that they were being heavily pressured if indeed that were happening. But it's not happening. The Prime Minister and the Treasurer have both stated clearly that it's not happening.
Would you say that maybe it's more when you were